Welcome back to Being Integrated. I'm Jude, and today we're looking at the conflict or the opposing viewpoints of the two biggest authors on focus books. So Nir Eyal wrote a book, Indistractable, which is really about taking back your focus. But the book he wrote before that is called Hooked, which goes over strategies technology companies can use to actually grab your attention and hold your attention. So in one book, he's showing the technology companies how to hook you, and then he realizes the problem. He talks about in his book, Indistractable, about how he was really losing his attention and it was impacting the relationship he had with his daughter. And so that spurred him to write the new book, Indistractable, where he really empowers people to take their attention back. And he does a lot of research around tools and strategies to regain your focus. Now, I thought Indistractable is great. It gives a lot of really great strategies. If I did have a criticism, is that it doesn't go far enough. So it's clear that Nir Eyal doesn't have ADHD, that he struggles with distractibility like a normal, well-adjusted person. And for those of us who are especially challenged with distraction, like myself, who has ADHD, while the tools are great and I do implement a lot of them, they don't get to the core feeling of restlessness, which is why I made my Meditation for ADHD course, which is to transform that. And I've also included similar type strategies from his book that are more tailored to a more distractible type person. So all that's in my course. You can watch the first module for free, link down below. But I really do think Nir's book is really great for most people. He's a super smart guy. He's done a ton of research, and I really appreciate what he's putting out there. But what happened as Johann Hari went to interview him for his book, Stolen Focus, is they had a real disagreement. Johann really sides with Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin, who did the documentary The Social Dilemma, and who also have a really excellent podcast called Your Undivided Attention. They essentially say that no matter how strong your willpower is, no matter how strategic you are with how you use your social media, your phones, your apps, that there are 1,000 engineers on the other end who are trying to get you hooked. And they really call for more regulation. But they're really smart about it. They call for a kind of smart regulation, specifically the end of surveillance capitalism, something we can get more into in a future video. But Nir really pans them. He thinks they're overreacting. He thinks that there have always been collective challenges and we can collectively overcome them. The core difference of view here between Johann and Nir is their optimism. So Nir thinks that we can collectively adjust. He thinks, yes, these things got bad, but we're all going to collectively learn the tools, similarly to how smoking was allowed on airplanes. It was common in everyone's house. And then we all realized smoking was bad, and then we kind of self-regulated. But Johann points to the big warnings on the packages and the bans on cigarette advertising as being key factors in that process. Now, of course, you can liken these things to past events, but each situation here is unique. So as much as we can compare it to smoking, this is quite different. So Johann Hari really kind of trashes Nir Eyal in his book. He likens Nir's argument to just grow up, be an adult, take responsibility for your attention, do the things in my book. But Johann also wanted to be fair to him, and I think he really genuinely tried to be fair to Nir's view. And he states in the book that he published their full interview on a website that anyone can listen to for free. So I listened to it. It's an hour and 40 minutes. And I found that Nir actually made some good points. But in listening to it, the sense I really got is that Nir is a good person. He really does believe that we can overcome this collectively. He really doesn't want to do harm, but he's very much in his bubble. He's a Stanford professor. He's extremely successful, extremely wealthy. And he's surrounded by other people who basically, have their stuff together. So he's saying, I can do this, I did this, you can do it too. But he doesn't realize how much worse off a lot of other people are. So when Johann talks about these things as being very addictive, Nir really pushes back and says, no, that's not addiction. Addiction is something so much worse. And he said that this is just technology. He actually says, well, why is it worse than watching a football game? But the reality is for many people, these things are incredibly addictive. And I really strongly believe that the addiction can be just as harmful or psychologically unhealthy as many other forms of addiction. And the reality is that there is a huge mental health crisis happening. And the funny thing is, Johann Hari actually talks about this in his last book, which is all about depression and the causes, a lot of them being social causes. So I think if everyone was really together, if we had a really collectively healthy population worldwide, then yes, we would be able to handle these social media apps and these algorithms a lot better. But that's just not the case. People are suffering, they're struggling, they don't have the right types of supports. And when people are struggling, they get pulled into anything that's going to make them feel better. And while social media can give you these intermittent rewards, these little hits of dopamine that can get people hooked in the same way gambling gets people hooked. Now we have age restrictions on gambling for very good reason. And Nir Eyal points to there is an age restriction on a lot of social media. It's 13, to which, of course, Johann is like, 13 is still very young. And not just talking about age here, but people of all ages are vulnerable to addiction. So it's not that people shouldn't be allowed to use these social medias, but the social media algorithms are so incredibly manipulative. They really are. They work so incredibly hard to figure out what will hold your attention. And the reality is that often it is not something good for us to be consuming all the time. Just like a car crash really grabs people's attention. If you see a car crash on the side of the road and then some beautiful flowers on the other side, you're going to look at the car crash. That's human nature. And so these social media algorithms are constantly showing us car crashes. Figuratively, of course. They're showing things that are going to grab our attention, often sometimes enraging us or really frightening us, showing us the real catastrophes in the world. And as a result, we get a very obscured view of reality. And that really impacts how we feel on a day-to-day basis. It becomes this deeply inhaled paradigm. Our experiences that we have that we often don't feel are too important are very much coloring our perspective and our attitude, how we see and feel about the world at large, how we see and feel about ourselves and others. And this has very well been proven that social media is having a detrimental impact. It's quite disturbing and it tends to polarize because what it does is it shows you more and more extreme views. So Johann in the book talks about YouTube algorithm specifically, where if you just click on the recommendations, within 10 videos, you get to a pretty extremist view. That is the direction the algorithm's always taking you. It's really the most vulnerable people, the people who don't have much in their life outside of social media, who don't have something meaningful to turn to in their spare time, who get drawn into these things because it's the easiest way to get some sort of stimulation, to get a little dopamine hit. It's the most available. It's always there, right in the palm of your hand. And these systems are designed to keep you on, to keep you glued, to keep you coming back. So Johann's not arguing to get rid of social media or anything like that, but he is saying that these algorithms are detrimental to our collective well-being. And to me, that is plainly obvious. And yes, some people are more resilient than others. And I think this is what Nir really doesn't take into account, just how vulnerable some people are. Johann likens it to running up and down escalators. So the stairs are coming down and you got to run up. And of course, a lot of people can make that. They can do it. But some people can't, and other people are just going to get tired, winded. They're not going to run all the way up. You're essentially always fighting against these urges, and you're always having to use all of these tools and strategies to buffer your use of these apps and social media. And that takes energy. So when you get tired, you're less likely to buffer. So if you are exhausted, many people are extremely exhausted, and this is actually part of Johann's book about why we are losing focus. One of the factors is our exhaustion, our lack of sleep, the working too much. He actually talks about the implementation of a 4-day work week and how that could be collectively beneficial. So because people are exhausted and tired, the part of your brain that regulates your behavior, that can make kind of more mature or better decisions for yourself, that part gets burnt out. And then so you're more likely to just get lost in the infinite scroll. So it's clear I really side with Johann here, and I do think there needs to be some collective action. That being said, I think Nir holds an important place in the conversation, mostly in that he's really focused on giving people the strategies that we can utilize right now. And that's what I'm doing too. This channel, my course, it's all about giving people tools right now to improve their lives, about empowering you right now. But that doesn't mean I can't also acknowledge that these problems are so big and so insidious that we need to address them collectively. And this is the final point in Johann's book, is that we need to take action collectively, that there needs to be a really large grassroots social movement to change the way that social media is impacting us. And when you really look at what it's doing to society, it's really hard to be as optimistic as Nir is. So something I learned in sociology when I took that class was that we're not rational. Humans are not rational. We're rationalizing. We make decisions based on mostly unconscious factors, largely emotional or on our own underlying desires, and then we rationalize those after. So it seems like Nir, who has built a huge career and made a ton of money around teaching apps how to get people more hooked on them, is rationalizing that what he's doing isn't that bad. And when you listen to the interview, you get a sense that Nir really isn't a bad guy, and he's not malintentioned at all. And in fact, he wrote his whole book trying to help people because he really wants to help people. He really does see the problem. But I just don't think that he sees how intense it is for the larger populace. And I also think him being in these circles, like him knowing a lot of the coders who create these apps and the CEOs, he doesn't see them as bad people because I don't think they're ill-willed either. And this is what becomes clear in The Social Dilemma, that when they interview a lot of the people who wrote the code that gets people more hooked, they are like, what have I done? Because they themselves got more hooked on these things and notice a drop in their quality of life because of it. So I'm going to again recommend Johann Hari's Stolen Focus. It's a fantastic book. I think that he does excellent commentary. He really walks you through all of these topics and really paints a clear picture of the problems we're collectively facing and how we can address these collectively. But also, Nir's stuff is actually super relevant too, and I think that could be implemented as well. And of course, if you want to explore the skills to get your own focus back and just a general sense of well-being, relaxed focus in your life, subscribe, because I'm going to be doing a ton more practices and explorations on these topics. Thanks again for tuning in.